Welcome to today's tutorial all about Adobe Lightroom. If you're new to Lightroom, or perhaps you haven't used it for a while and you want to get to know it better, today's tutorial should be perfect for you. We'll start at the very top and give you an overview on how to import your photos, organize your photos, tag your photos, and then move into processing, contrast, exposure, tones, lens corrections, all that sort of thing. Okay, apologies for the poor sound and also the kind of light and the camera footage on that first bit. Not ideal. But let's jump on in and here's our Adobe Lightroom interface. Some of us will be familiar with, some of us less so. So as you can see when you come into Lightroom, the screen is kind of split up into these three columns with a long thin panel along the bottom horizontally as well. Along the top here we've got some additional tabs: Library, Develop, Map, Book, Slideshow, Print and Web. Now for the purposes of today's tutorial we're just going to be looking at Library and Develop. Okay, so this left column over here, this is where you decide where to import the photos from on your computer, and if you've got a card reader that will show too. And it also shows any smart collections that you've got, photos that were brought in on the previous import as you can see here, or we can cycle through the dates at the bottom, which will kind of take us through our archive and show us any other photos that we have previously imported. So you see, if I click on some of these dates here, or just hover over them, you'll see that those photos, that preview thumbnail in the top left corner, changes according to the first file. Down the bottom we've got some more options around collections and publishing services. If you want to publish to Adobe Stock or Behance or any of those other services, you can do that straight from in Lightroom. There are two places to import from, both do the same thing, so there's one button just here. Or you can go File and Import Photos or Videos up here. What you're doing is you're essentially opening those images, a little bit like you would with many other software packages, but actually you're importing photos from a location, keeping the originals intact and moving these photos into your Lightroom catalog. The beauty of doing this is that it keeps your original photo intact in that original location and gives you a new version or a copy in Lightroom to edit. Okay, so here's a collection of stock photos I've pulled together from a website for purposes of this tutorial. What we get here is we get a bit of a preview of the images within this file. You can unselect which one's brought over, so they're all ticked by default, which means you want to bring them all in most circumstances. I'll come back to that in a second. You can just click on each one that you want to import, or you can check or uncheck all if you wish to. I said a moment ago about most of the time it will all be ticked by default. That is unless Lightroom recognizes photos that you've previously imported. So for example, you could be pitchside at a football match, covering events, maybe photographing a wedding, and you import some photos without clearing your memory card since previous import. Only those that are new will be selected, so it makes your job a little bit easier. Over on this right hand column here, you can add things like your keywords, your metadata. So again, if you're wanting to add your own copyright information, you can do in here. Also your IPTC data and anything else photographers will be used to using. That can all be applied at the import stage across all of the photos you import, whether it be 1 or 1,000. You can also apply some preset develop settings to all those photos if you want. There's some of those already available in Lightroom. I'm not going to on this occasion. I've also got this option for the metadata presets. Really handy tab. You'll see I've got a load here from different football matches and things I've covered. Really handy to set them up before you arrive at an event. And then also we can add some keywords if there are any that you wish to apply to the entire set of photos. You just free type those separated by a comma into this box right here. So once you're happy with all the selections that you've made and the presets and metadata, etc., you can go down here to the bottom right hand corner and hit that import button. Okay, so Lightroom is just telling us here that if you want to kind of look up the location of your photos, so that can be added If your camera maybe doesn't have GPS, then you can do that manually here. It's given me the option, as I say, because these are just stock photos that obviously don't have any location or GPS data already embedded. Okay, so import done. You can see here, similar screen, but the columns have changed. So in the middle, all the photos that you've imported are found here. On the left-hand side, we can still see all the other collections, so that hasn't changed a bit yet. And also you'll see this panel along the bottom we mentioned, the horizontal one, is changing to timeline, which you can click through and change the photo that you're looking at. So we're just cycling through some of those stock images here. If you want to apply any metadata or keywords to specific photographs, you can do that over in that right column there, where you can see the likes of keywording and metadata, comments, etc. You can also click and give photos a star rating, like I'm doing here. So you can, at a later date, sort these photos either in Lightroom or elsewhere by rating. This thumbnail slider lets you toggle how large you want those preview thumbnails to be. Okay, then let's hop over into develop. We've selected photograph number 4 there, the lady with the surfboard, and we're going to hit the develop tab at the top. And you'll see that the screen changes slightly in that left column and right column now have different options in them. I won't go through every option over in this left-hand column. However, the history panel is a really good one to be aware of. Essentially, each and every amend or develop you make to this image will be recorded here, and this will expand with a new line per edit. And if you wish to jump to an earlier version, you just click back through each of them. The film strip at the bottom of the screen remains in place, allowing you to jump from one photo to another. While I won't show it on this video, you can right click on the images in the film strip and copy develop settings from one to a number of photos. In the right column, we will make most of our edits. Top right is our histogram, and as you can see, as I hold the mouse and drag around within that histogram area, you can manipulate the image that you see. Like so much in Lightroom, this is so quick and easy to start making quite drastic changes to your images or subtle ones. We also have a checkbox here allowing us to revert back to the original photo. The next tool down is our crop and rotate tool. Obviously, as the name suggests, allows us to crop the image, also change the aspect ratio if we wish. To rotate the image, once this tool is active, just click anywhere around the side of the image, hold your left mouse button and rotate. I mentioned before about this panel on the left, history, recording each edit to allow you to flick between them. Here we go, this is it in action. As I mentioned earlier, we're not going to look at every single tool, so these ones to the right of crop and rotate you can look at in your own time. We're just going to try and cover off the basics here. The eyedropper tool here allows us to select the white balance for the photo, so if you want to alter the white balance, obviously ideally you do that in camera beforehand. Otherwise, select this tool and then just drag over the image. If you go too pale, it will tell you you're looking obviously to select the neutral colour. And there we go, you'll see that has dramatically changed the colour to this really cool, almost icy surfing image. Using the history panel on the left again, we're just going to hop back to its previous state. Let's quickly jump into some of these other tools, and we'll start with the slider for the temperature, abbreviated to temp. Simple slide motion will just change the temperature of the image from very hot to very cold and everything in between. And then the tint option will allow us to give the image a certain tint should you wish to, and again this is on a slider basis. Okay, we're running out of time, let's speed things up a bit. We've got contrast, exposure, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks in this next section. You can hit auto like I did there, and the computer, the program will automatically select what it thinks is right. Alternatively, let's just flick back in history, and you can manually adjust each slider. This is really handy for so many types of photography. In sports, for example, you might want to drag down the shadows and brighten those highlights for night matches when noise could be an issue. Scrolling down, we see clarity, vibrance and saturation. Again, all on a slider basis. These are brilliant tools. Clarity, I absolutely love using. However, Be careful when you use these, because as I zoom in, you will see images do pixelate, dependent on the amount of amends you are making with things such as clarity, and the same for contrast and many of the other options you see here as well. We can open up the tone curve, and again, by holding the cursor or the left mouse button down and moving the cursor, you can alter blacks, whites, midtones, highlights, and shadows. I'm personally not a big fan of this tool. I barely ever use it, but it is there should you wish to. In this panel right here, you can change the hue, saturation, and luminance of any color that you wish to. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, by the way, is if you want to convert a photo to black and white, and I'll probably do a separate tutorial about this, scroll back at the top here, next to color, you can click treatment as black and white. That will change the image, and also you can do it right here. And if you do that, you can see the surface quite silhouetted, kind of artistic. Okay, split toning is next. This allows you to alter highlights, shadows, and also add colors into each of those should you wish to. So if you want a really kind of dark blue within your shadows or a bright red within your highlights, then this is the place to do that. If you go into detail, this shows the detail of the image, and you can kind of sharpen that up, reduce noise, luminance, etc. However, when you do that, as I mentioned earlier, these amendments will probably introduce some pixelation to this little zoomed detail view. Is helpful to see just how badly that is happening, as well as obviously checking out the detail that is being added to the image. Lens corrections is something else I use very little of. However, you can ask Adobe Lightroom to automatically recognize from the photo data the lens and camera the photo is taken with, and it can then kind of reverse or remove chromatic aberrations that may occur. Let me just see if I can find an example image real quick here, just so you can see the effect. I'll just go for one of these kind of wide angle staging shots that I've taken. Just watch around the edges of this image as I enable profile correction. It's going to show us, automatically recognize, the camera and lens used for this shot, and you'll see the edges of the image just alter slightly. So useful to know that's there. It will have a bigger impact on some images more than others, normally dependent obviously on the camera and lens setup you've used, and you can obviously both alter the distortion and the vignetting here as well. Okay, hold on tight, we are nearly there. We're going to jump straight into the next section down, which is transform. I'm not going to use anything in here because I've probably only used it myself about 4 or 5 times in 3 or 4 years. But there are lots of different transform options here if you wish to toggle through them and slide those over. Into effects, this is where you can add a vignette also if you don't do it within lens corrections. From left to right, we'll give it a nice white vignette around the edge of the image, and from right to left, we'll give it a black shadowy vignette. I much prefer using a black one. There are some occasions a white one might look good. Overall, I very rarely add vignettes unless I'm doing some sort of artistic image. The dehaze tool here is also available in Lightroom. There's quite a lot made of this a couple of years ago when it was first put into both Photoshop and Lightroom. Really good tool to remove a bit of mist from images, or in this particular example I've got on here, kind of remove some of the haze created by the staging floodlighting. Something else you will probably want to do in Lightroom is add metadata to specific images. To do this, we're going to need to go back to the Library tab. Now, obviously, when we imported the images, we could have added a metadata preset for all images. This is going to allow us to actually describe what's going on in an individual image. So, select the image. Here's our surfer lady again. Go to metadata, find the caption field, and just free type into that box a description of what is happening in the image. An example may be if you're covering golf, for example, Sergio Garcia shoots towards hole 7 at Pebble Beach. This is where you can also add keywords to the image. So for example, on this image, you could add sunset. And then once you're finally happy with the image that you've edited and you've added your metadata in, it is time to export. Now, exporting the image takes the copy that you have edited and all the changes you have made and export it to a new location, you are not replacing the original file, which will still be wherever you imported it to. Okay, so file, export. There's also an export with previous we'll look at in a minute. But when you go to export, you've got all sorts of different options for exporting the image. So for example, choose a location to which you want to export the file to. So we will go to stock images here. You can add things such as add it to a subfolder. You can change the file naming convention. So if you want to give it a prefix or put it as part of a sequence, if you're exporting a lot of photos together, then you can do that here. Down further, we've got options for file settings. You can put a maximum quality or file size onto the image or images you are exporting. There's also some image sizing on there in terms of the height and the width and the resolution. Let's continue down a bit further. We've got options around output sharpening, metadata. So if you want to remove certain information, location or person info, there's watermarking options, post-processing options, ton of stuff we're not going to look at now. But when you're happy, hit export. Now you can see what it's done here. Because I'm exporting this into the file from where I imported it, and it's got the same file name, I haven't changed that. It is just saying to me, do you want to do this, skip it, or overwrite it? Last but not least, I said there's an export with previous option. So once you've got all your export options set, as we've just been through, you can then go to File, Export with Previous on a previous photo. And there we go, we're all done. We've got through the Adobe Lightroom overview. I hope you enjoyed it and found it quite interesting and useful. If you did, then I'd love to see you subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter or check out other tutorials on my channel and some information about myself over on my website, the details of which can be seen on screen now. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I hope to see you next time.